Nia sat in the conference room, her fingers gripping the pen so tightly that her knuckles whitened. She'd spent the last few weeks compiling research, revising drafts, and making sure every detail was polished. Her colleagues had no idea how many late nights she'd spent at home, trying to perfect a presentation that might finally get her the recognition she deserved. She could feel the weight of expectation on her shoulders, a pressure she had come to know well. Every move she made had to be perfect, no room for error, no room for doubt. Her performance had to be flawless. It was the only way she could ever be seen. As James Calloway, the team leader, stood at the front of the room, Nia's heart beat a little faster. He was about to present the final segment of her work. She'd taken every word he had said to her in their last meeting, every note of feedback, and incorporated it, perfected it. She had given him nothing but the best. But there was a part of her that feared it wouldn't be enough, that it wouldn't matter. James's voice cut through the room as he spoke to the group, praising the efforts of the team. "Well, folks, I think we're getting there," he said with a self-assured chuckle. "But I gotta say, Nia's presentation, she's got this unique flair, doesn't she? You know, I wasn't sure she could handle something this complex, but wow, who knew she could pull it off?" The chuckle that followed wasn't kind. It wasn't light. It wasn't a compliment. It was the kind of laugh that twisted into something heavy and dismissive, and it landed like a punch in the pit of Nia's stomach. She froze. The words stung more than she could have imagined. Who knew she could pull it off? Was that all she was? A question mark? A curiosity? She fought the instinct to shrink. She wanted to disappear right then and there, to sink into the floor beneath her feet. The room was awkwardly silent for a beat. Some of her colleagues shifted in their seats, eyes darting away as if unsure of how to react. It was a joke, sure, but it wasn't. It wasn't funny. It never was. James continued, oblivious to the tension thickening in the air. "I mean, no offense, Nia," he added, though his tone didn't soften. "But, you've definitely exceeded my expectations. Just don't let it go to your head." The room's tension swelled. Nia wanted to scream, but instead she forced herself to keep her face neutral, to keep her shoulders back. She had been here before, hadn't she? This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. She had learned to swallow the anger, to tamp it down, to wear it like a second skin. But this time it felt different. This time she felt like something inside her had cracked, something deep and old, like the very foundation of who she was. And what she was worth was being questioned by someone who never saw her as more than an outsider. The meeting continued, but Nia could no longer focus on the words. Her mind raced. Had anyone else heard it? Could they feel what she felt? The heaviness in the room, the discomfort that no one dared to speak out loud. She glanced over at Maya. Maya, who had always had her back. Maya's eyes met hers for the briefest moment, and there was understanding there, an unspoken solidarity that cut through the noise. But Maya didn't speak. None of them did. The silence of the room crushed Nia's spirit even more than James's words. Her colleagues, who had always claimed to be her friends, her team, sat still, afraid to challenge James, too afraid to disrupt the status quo. As the meeting ended and people began to filter out of the room, Nia remained seated, her mind still spinning. She replayed the moment over and over again in her head, as if finding the right words to respond, though she had none. What could she say? Could she risk being labeled the angry black woman, the one who couldn't take a joke? Was she even worth the fight? Nia's chest tightened as she walked to her desk, the weight of invisible labor pressing down on her. For years she had worked hard, too hard to be anything less than excellent. But no matter how good she was, it never felt like enough. Her work, her ideas, her voice always dismissed or undermined by someone somewhere. And today was just the latest version of that. When the office emptied out, Maya approached her quietly, her steps soft, careful. "Hey," she said, lowering her voice. "I saw that. You okay?" Nia gave a tight smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine," she said, though her words felt hollow even to her own ears. "Just tired." Maya didn't buy it. She didn't have to. "Nia, you don't have to take this. You're not invisible, you know? You don't have to let them get away with it. Nia's throat tightened. She wanted to believe Maya, to feel the hope in her words, but she didn't know if she had it in her to fight anymore. What's the point? It's just how things are. Maya's expression softened, but she wasn't about to let it slide. You don't have to take this. You're better than them, Nia. You've worked too hard to let them keep you down like this. You deserve better. Nia swallowed hard, her eyes searching Maya's face. It was true what Maya said, but the fear of the consequences still loomed over her, the fear of what standing up would cost. I don't know, Nia whispered, her voice strained. I'm not sure I have the strength to fight it. But in that moment, something inside her shifted. A small spark, just enough to start a fire. Maya gave her a brief, knowing nod before she left, leaving Nia alone with her thoughts. Nia sat back in her chair, the weight of it all pressing down on her again. The endless cycle of proving herself. The constant undermining. She had heard the whispers, had felt the coldness in the air for too long. But today something had changed. The hurt from James's words had landed deeper than she thought it would, but so had the realization that she could not keep swallowing this hurt. A wave of quiet rage began to build inside her, but it wasn't the angry, reckless kind. No, this was a different kind of fire, a steady, determined kind. She wouldn't stay silent anymore. She couldn't. Not after everything she'd been through. Not after the years of being overlooked, minimized, and ignored. No more. The next step wasn't clear, but for the first time in a long time, Nia felt like she could make one. And that was enough to keep her going. Nia sat alone in her office, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, as the weight of the morning's meeting pressed heavily on her chest. James's words echoed in her mind, the mockery still fresh in her ears. Who knew she could pull it off? He had said it like a joke, but it stung with every beat of her heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how much work she put in, no matter how much effort she poured into her craft, it would never be enough. They would never see her as more than the stereotype they were so eager to reinforce. She could feel her confidence cracking piece by piece. Every step she had taken to prove herself, every late night, every sacrifice, felt like it had been for nothing. The questions began to invade her thoughts, sharp and unforgiving. Was I wrong to think they'd see me for my work? Am I enough? The world outside her office, the world she had once navigated with a quiet sense of purpose, now felt foreign. The doubts that had only whispered in the corners of her mind were now shouting, relentless and cruel. She looked out the window, the view of the city offering no comfort. She had worked so hard to get here, but the harder she worked, the more invisible she became. The more she succeeded, the more they seemed to want her to fail. Hey, Maya's voice broke through her thoughts, soft but steady. Maya stood in the doorway, her expression a mixture of concern and frustration. How are you doing? Nia didn't answer right away. Instead, she let the question hang in the air, feeling the weight of it. I'm fine, she said, but her voice was strained. Brittle? She knew Maya could see right through her. You're not fine, Maya said, stepping into the office. I saw what happened in that meeting. You don't have to just take it, you know. You don't have to keep swallowing it down. Nia's hands clenched into fists on her desk. Maya's words were both a lifeline and a reminder of the battle ahead. She wanted to be strong, to speak out, but the fear of being labeled difficult or overreacting loomed large in her mind. She had seen it happen before. She had seen others like her, women of color, branded with the same labels for speaking up. Maybe I don't have a choice, Nia muttered, her voice low. Maybe it's just the way things are. Maya's expression softened, but there was no mistaking the fire in her eyes. No, Nia, it's not how it has to be. You're not invisible. You're not a punchline, and you don't have to let them keep doing this to you. You don't have to stay quiet. Nia looked down, her gaze fixed on the desk. She wanted to believe. Maya, she really did. But the weight of the system, of everything that was stacked against her, felt like too much. She had worked too hard to be seen, and still, they ignored her, dismissed her. She couldn't afford to lose her job, her career, her security. I don't know if I can do this, Maya, Nia admitted, her voice trembling with the vulnerability she had been trying to suppress. I don't know if I can fight this. What if I'm just being too sensitive? What if it's just a joke? What if I make it worse? Maya crossed the room, her steps deliberate, her gaze never leaving Nia. You're not being too sensitive. This isn't a joke, and you're not overreacting. It's not just James. It's the whole damn system. It's how they've been treating you since the day you walked in here. How they've been dismissing you, undervaluing you. This is bigger than just one guy's comment. You have every right to speak up. I don't even know where to start, Nia said, her voice cracking. I'm scared, Maya. I'm scared that if I say something, they'll just shut me down. They'll make it worse. I'm already the only one here like me. If I make a scene, what happens then? Will they just send me packing? Maya's gaze softened, but her words were firm. They'll try, they always do. But that's why you have to be louder. You can't let them get away with it anymore. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Nia's thoughts whirled in a storm of confusion. She wanted to believe Maya. She wanted to believe that speaking out could change anything. But deep down, Nia feared that nothing would change, that the system was too broken, too entrenched. She had been fighting her whole life to prove her worth, to carve out a space where her talents could shine. But no matter how much she gave, no matter how hard she tried, they always found a way to push her down. She stared at her hands, remembering how James had mocked her work, how her colleagues had just sat there, silent, letting it happen. The disappointment in their eyes, the hesitation to speak up, it stung more than the insult itself. They were complicit. She was surrounded by people who claimed to be on her side, but never took a stand when it mattered. A surge of anger rose, in her chest raw and unfiltered. I'm so tired of this, Nia muttered, more to herself than to Maya. I'm so tired of always having to prove myself, of always being underestimated. Why can't they just see me for what I am? Why does my talent have to be second-guessed every time? Maya stood beside her, her presence solid and unwavering. Because they can't handle it, Nia. They can't handle seeing someone like you succeed. They need you to stay in the background, to stay quiet. But you don't have to stay there. You don't have to let them keep you in that box. Nia let out a slow breath, the anger inside her coiling tighter. She had been silent for so long, enduring, swallowing her frustration. But now it felt like the pressure was too much to bear. She couldn't let it break her. She couldn't let them win. The realization hit her hard. This wasn't just about James. It wasn't even just about the people in this office. This was about a system that had been designed to shut her down before she even had a chance. It wasn't personal, it was institutional. And it wasn't going to change unless someone had the courage to stand up. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. I won't stay silent, Nia said, her voice stronger now. I won't let them silence me anymore. Maya's eyes shone with pride. That's what I'm talking about. Now let's make sure they hear you. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with risks and fear, but for the first time, Nia felt like she had a choice, and that choice was to fight back. To reclaim her dignity, to demand the respect she had earned. She wasn't invisible anymore, and she wasn't backing down. The boardroom felt suffocating, the air thick with tension. Nia's heart hammered in her chest as she stood before the team, presenting her idea with the passion she had cultivated for months. Her voice was steady, but the nerves coiled tight in her stomach. She knew this pitch could change everything. This was her moment. She had worked harder than anyone in the room. She knew her idea was groundbreaking, her research meticulous, and yet as she spoke, the doubt lingered at the edges of her mind. Would they see it? Would they finally see her? Or would it be another moment where her voice was drowned out? She glanced at James, sitting at the head of the table, his eyes never leaving his phone. He wasn't listening. She could feel it, the indifference, the unspoken dismissal. She kept talking, pushing through the discomfort, her words flowing, but the sinking feeling in her stomach only deepened. She had been here before. She had fought too hard, struggled too long to be treated like this again. She could see the others around the table, nodding along with his words, never truly hearing hers. When she finished, there was a pause, but no applause, no acknowledgement. Just the usual silence that felt heavier with every passing second. Then James spoke, his voice cutting through the stillness with the ease of someone accustomed to authority. I think we'll go with Robert's idea, he said, glancing briefly at Nia before turning his attention to the group. "It's more traditional, safer," the room murmured in agreement. Robert, yet another white colleague, had pitched a simple, safe concept. Nothing new, nothing daring. Nia's heart sank further. She felt her hands tremble as the weight of those words crushed her. Her idea was dismissed. Again, not because it wasn't good enough, but because it was hers. Because she was still invisible in their eyes. It was a moment she had feared for so long. A moment where everything she had worked for, every hour of effort, was made irrelevant by something she couldn't control. The sting of humiliation spread. Through her chest, a familiar ache that she had learned to ignore over the years. But today it was too much. It wasn't just James's rejection, it was the cumulative effect of years of being overlooked. The constant microaggressions, the whispered doubts, the dismissals. All of it, like tiny cuts, finally brought her to the edge. And today, the wound was too deep. Her voice, thick with emotion, broke the silence. "I've been here longer than most of you," Nia said, her words sharp, laced with years of unspoken frustration. "I've worked harder than most of you, but you've never once seen me, not really." The room went still, every eye turned to her. Her pulse thundered in her ears, but she stood taller now, feeling the weight of years of pent-up pain and anger coalesce into something more powerful than she had ever imagined. For the first time, she didn't just want them to listen. She needed them to hear her. "I've been in this company doing my best to prove myself, to bring value, to show that I'm not just another checkbox. But all you've done is push me aside. Not because I'm not qualified, but because I'm not the right kind of person in your eyes." Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. "You don't even see me as a threat. You just ignore me, like I don't matter." The silence in the room deepened, suffocating as the full weight of her words sank in. "I've had to fight every day to be seen," she continued, her voice now steady with conviction. "To be treated like I'm worthy of being here, like my ideas mean something. And all you've done is reinforce the idea that nothing I do will ever be enough." Nia paused, her eyes sweeping the room. She saw the shock on their faces, the discomfort. She could feel the wall between her and them, the invisible barriers that had always existed. She wasn't just speaking to them now. She was speaking to the system they had all built, a system that protected their comfort at the expense of her dignity. This isn't about one meeting. It's not about one comment. It's about years of being overlooked, years of being told that I am not enough because of the color of my skin. It's about systemic racism that's been baked into this place from the start, and it has to change. Now, the silence was deafening. Nia's chest rose and fell with the weight of what she had said, but her heart was lighter than it had been in years. She had spoken her truth. Finally. It was out there. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she was suffocating under the weight of it all. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face reddening as he tried to regain control of the room. "Nia, I think you're taking this too personally. We're all just trying to do what's best for the company," he said, his voice defensive, trying to downplay what had just transpired. "We just want to be sure we're making the right decision." "No." Nia's voice was firm, unyielding. "You're not hearing me. You never have. This isn't just about decisions. This is about power. This is about a system that favors the people who look like you. This is about a culture that has been built on exclusion, and it has to change." James's eyes narrowed. He didn't like being called out. His lips curled into a tight smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Nia, I think you're overreacting. Maybe you're just feeling sensitive. This is a professional environment. We can't let emotions dictate our work." That was it. The same tired line he'd used to deflect every issue. She had heard it before, from him, from others. Overreacting. Too sensitive. The same old tactics. To dismiss her, to silence her, but not anymore. "I'm not overreacting," Nia said, her voice rising with the full force of her resolve. "I'm speaking the truth. And the truth is, you've created a system that excludes people like me. You've let racism fester in this company for far too long. And if you think I'm going to sit back and accept it, you're wrong." The room was silent once more, James's expression faltered, his mask cracking as he struggled to maintain control. But it was too late. Nia had already taken back her power. The moment felt like a turning point, a sharp breath before a storm. There was no going back now. Nia had made her stand, and she wasn't backing down. She wasn't going to let her voice be erased again. "I will be filing a formal complaint," she said, each word cutting through the tension. "And I'm not going to stop until this company faces the reality of what it's doing to people like me. I'm done waiting for someone else to change it. It starts with me." Nia turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind a stunned silence, a room full of people who would never forget this moment. For the first time, she was in control of her story. The future was uncertain. The road ahead was filled with obstacles, but for the first time in a long while, Nia felt a sense of power, a sense of purpose. She was no longer just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every voice that had been silenced, every person who had been made invisible. And she was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the fight for justice had only just begun. Disser's office felt different now, quieter, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nia sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen but not seeing it. Her mind was miles away, reflecting on the whirlwind of the past few weeks. The emotional toll had been immense. The anxiety, the sleepless nights, the constant questioning of whether she had done the right thing, whether speaking up had been worth it. But as time passed, her resolve had only grown stronger. She had reclaimed her voice. She had taken control of her narrative. And in doing so, she had forced a system that had ignored her for years to confront its own flaws. A part of her still couldn't believe it. She had done it. She had stood up to James, to the company, to a culture that had built itself on silencing people like her, and they couldn't ignore her anymore. She thought of Maya, who had been with her through it all. Maya, who had believed in her when no one else did. Maya, who had quietly supported her in the shadows, now standing tall beside her in the light. Together, they had forced this conversation to happen. They had sparked something bigger than just one woman's fight for respect. It had become a movement, a ripple effect that was still spreading, that was still changing the way people thought about race and justice in the workplace. Nia felt a small smile tug at the corners of her lips. It had been worth it. The phone rang, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was the HR department. She braced herself, not knowing what to expect, but knowing that whatever happened next, she would face it head-on. "Hello, Nia." The voice on the other end was warm, but with an underlying tension. "We've had our internal review, and after discussing your complaint, we've decided to take immediate action." Nia's heart skipped. She wasn't sure what exactly they were going to say, but she could already feel the shift in the air. "James has been placed on leave pending further investigation," the HR representative continued. "The company has also committed to reviewing its policies and diversity programs. We're aware that this environment has not been conducive to fostering inclusivity, and we are making changes." Nia sat back, absorbing the words. They're doing something. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The acknowledgement was the first step toward real change, and the HR representative added, "We would like to offer you an opportunity to take on a leadership role in the company's new diversity initiatives." Nia blinked, stunned. A leadership role. She had dreamt of this, but always in the abstract, always with the understanding that it might never happen. But now the company was offering it to her, not as a token gesture, not as a way to placate her. They were offering her real responsibility, real power. I need to think about this," Nia said, her voice shaky. The weight of the offer, of the responsibility, settled over her. "Take your time," the HR representative said. "We're committed to supporting you. This is just the beginning of what we hope will be a long journey of change." As she hung up, Nia leaned back in her chair, her thoughts swirling. The company was acknowledging its failures. James was being held accountable, and she had been recognized finally, after all the years of fighting for validation. But it wasn't over. Change would take time. It would be hard. There were still battles to fight. But Nia wasn't afraid anymore. She stood up, her eyes drifting to the window, where the city stretched out before her. She had spent so many years trying to fit into a world that had never truly accepted her. But now she was no longer invisible. Her voice had been heard. She had fought for her place, and now she was going to take it. The door opened and Maya stepped inside, her face lighting up when she saw Nia standing there, her posture more confident than ever. "Did you get the call?" Maya asked, her voice filled with excitement and hope. Nia nodded, a small smile on her face. "I did." Maya's eyes widened. "And?" "They offered me a leadership role in their diversity initiatives," Nia said, her voice filled with awe and disbelief. "They're really serious about making changes." Maya grinned, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Nia. You made them listen." Nia took a deep breath, her hands steady now. "We made them listen. You were with me every step of the way." Maya's smile softened. "We're not done yet, though. There's still so much work to do. But you've changed. Everything." Nia's eyes met Maya's, and for the first time in a long while she felt at peace. The fight wasn't over, but the path ahead felt a little clearer, a little brighter. "Yes," Nia said, her voice firm with the weight of her own conviction. "But we've made a start, and I'm not backing down." Together they walked out of the office, their conversation flowing with optimism and the kind of quiet strength that only comes after a hard-won victory. They talked about the future, about the work ahead, about the people who needed to be heard and seen. The journey was far from over, but Nia knew she wasn't walking it alone. She had allies now, and she had herself, her strength, her voice, her power. As they stepped outside into the bright afternoon, Nia looked up at the towering building before her. The place that had once been a symbol of her struggle was now a reminder of how far she had come. She was no longer just another employee. She was a leader. She was someone who had changed the narrative. "I'm going to keep fighting," she said, her voice filled with purpose. "For me, for everyone who's been silenced, for everyone who needs to be seen." Maya nodded, her expression resolute. "And we'll keep fighting together." As they walked side by side, Nia felt a sense of calm that had eluded her for so long. She had fought for her place at the table, and now she was going to make sure that table was a place where everyone had a seat. Her journey wasn't just about her. It was about creating a future where no one had to struggle in silence. It was about forging a path where equality wasn't a dream, but a reality. And Nia knew deep down that the battle for justice, for true equality, would never truly end. But she was ready. She was more than ready. Her voice would echo far beyond the office walls, and her legacy was just beginning.